I found the watch in a kitchen drawer in Spokane, Washington, while helping clear out the house of a man I had not spoken to in 18 years. It was a plain stainless steel Timex with a black face and a scratched crystal. I knew it before I picked it up. On the back, beneath the worn engraving, was a tiny crescent-shaped dent near the winding crown. I had made that dent myself with a bench vise in 1991. The watch had belonged to my younger brother, Daniel. I gave it to him when he turned 30. He laughed because it was not expensive, then wore it every day for the next 15 years. Daniel was a cabinet maker, and the watch survived sawdust, glue, solvents, rain, and one fall from a loading dock. I believe it had not survived the night he disappeared. My name is Robert Hale. I was 66 when I found it, retired after nearly 4 decades installing and servicing commercial signs. I had spent my working life on ladders, rooftops, and bucket trucks, making sure letters stayed lit over grocery stores, hospitals, motels, and strip malls. You learn to trust what is bolted down and question what only looks secure. The house belonged to my old friend, Wesley Grant. Wes had died after a stroke. His daughter, Claire, asked me to help sort tools and household items because she lived in California and had only a few days in town. I had not expected to find anything connected to Daniel. The last time I saw the watch, Daniel was wearing it on a dock at Lake Pen O'Reilly in the summer of 2006. That night, during a violent argument, he threw a canvas duffel bag into the lake. The watch was inside it. I saw him put it there. I saw the bag sink. The next morning, Daniel left town. He never came back. For 18 years, I told myself the watch was sitting under 40 feet of cold water with the rest of whatever my brother wanted gone. Instead, I was standing in Wes Grant's kitchen with it in my palm, and taped beneath the drawer where I found it was a folded note in Wes's handwriting. It said only, "Bob should have this now." Wes had been my closest friend before the night at the lake. We met in the late 80s when I was installing a sign at a furniture showroom where he worked as a delivery manager. The company had ordered blue channel letters for the roofline, and one section arrived with a cracked transformer. Wes climbed onto the roof to complain and stayed to hand me tools. By lunch, we were arguing about baseball. By the end of the year, he and his wife were spending holidays with my family. Daniel liked him too. The three of us fished together whenever work allowed. Daniel brought a green tackle box that never closed properly. Wes supplied cheap cigars. I brought too much food. The watch was always on Daniel's wrist. What broke us apart was not one big betrayal. It was a pile of smaller things. Daniel's marriage failed in 2004. He blamed himself, then his wife, then everybody who tried to help. He stopped showing up for cabinet jobs. He borrowed money from me twice and never repaid it. I became the older brother who offered advice before listening. Wes became the friend who listened too much. By the summer of 2006, Daniel was staying in a rented trailer near the lake. He called me one afternoon and said he needed help moving some belongings. Wes came with me. At the trailer, Daniel was agitated. He accused me of talking to his former wife behind his back. I had, not romantically, nothing like that. She called because she was worried about him, and I told her where he was staying. Daniel considered that a betrayal. The argument followed us to the dock. He held the canvas duffel bag against his chest and said, "You don't get to decide who knows where I am." I told him, "Then stop making people wonder if you're alive." Wes stepped between us. Daniel pulled off his watch and dropped it into the open bag. I remember the small silver flash. Then he zipped the bag shut and threw it into the water. "There's your proof," he said. "Proof of what?" "That I can leave something behind." The bag sank slowly. Daniel walked away. Wes drove him to the bus station the next morning. At least, that was what Wes told me. I believed him until I found the watch in his house. Claire knew nothing about the watch. She stood beside me in her father's kitchen and turned it over in her hand. "Dad kept that? You've never seen it?" "No." She looked embarrassed, as if she should have known every object in his house. Wes had been a private man after his wife died. Claire loved him, but they spoke by phone more than they saw each other. I asked whether Wes had left any letters. She brought me a cardboard file box from the hall closet. Inside were tax papers, appliance manuals, old photographs, and 3 notebooks filled with addresses and phone numbers. Daniel's name appeared in the second notebook. Beside it was a Portland, Oregon, address dated 2007. I had never known Daniel lived in Portland. Wes told me Daniel left the region entirely. He said Daniel went east, maybe Montana, maybe farther. The Portland address belonged to a small woodworking cooperative that still existed. I called. A man named Adrian Cole answered. When I asked about Daniel Hale, he was quiet for several seconds. "You're Robert?" "Yes." "Daniel's brother?" "Yes." "Then you should come here." I drove to Portland 2 days later. The cooperative occupied an old warehouse near the river. Adrian was about my age, lean, with white hair tied back at his neck. He showed me a workbench with deep saw marks along one edge. "Daniel worked here for almost 3 years," he said. "Why didn't he contact me?" Adrian looked uncomfortable. "Because he thought you didn't want him to." "Who told him that?" He did not answer directly. Instead, he opened a metal drawer beneath the bench. Inside was a photograph of Daniel and Wes standing together in front of the warehouse. The date, written on the back, was 2008. 2 years after Wes supposedly dropped Daniel at the bus station and never saw him again. I felt something harden inside me. How often did Wes visit? At first, every few months. Did he bring the watch? Adrian frowned. "What watch?" I showed him a photograph from my phone. He recognized it immediately. Daniel wore that when he first came here. I stared at him. "No, he threw it in the lake." Adrian shook his head. He was wearing it the day I met him. That was the first time I understood that the watch had never been in the duffel bag when it sank. I replayed the dock scene all the way back to Spokane. Daniel had removed something from his wrist. I had seen silver. I had assumed it was the watch. But memory is generous when you ask it to fill a gap. Adrian told me Daniel wore the Timex for several months in Portland, then stopped. "Why?" He said it kept reminding him of home. Did he give it to Wes? I think so. That changed the shape of the mystery. I had spent 18 years believing Daniel destroyed the watch as part of his break from me. In reality, he kept it. Then, at some point, he gave it to Wes. Claire helped me search more of her father's papers. We found hotel receipts from Portland, gas receipts, and one envelope containing photographs of furniture Daniel built at the cooperative. No letters. No explanation. Then Claire found a locked metal cash box. The key was taped beneath it. Inside were 4 postcards. All were addressed to me. None had been mailed. The first was from Portland. "Bob, I'm still angry. That doesn't mean I want to stay gone forever." The second came from Bend. "I keep thinking if I call, we'll have the same argument because neither of us knows how to have a different one." The third was from Tacoma. "Wes says you're doing fine. Maybe that makes this easier." The fourth had no picture on the front, just a blank card from a hospital gift shop. "I am going to try again when I can speak without blaming you for everything." There was no date on that one. I asked Claire why Wes would keep Daniel's postcards. She sat down on the floor. "I don't know. I did. Or I thought I did. Wes had been carrying messages between us. Maybe Daniel gave him the postcards to deliver. Maybe Wes decided not to." I called Adrian again. "Did Daniel ever ask Wes to give me anything?" "Yes." "What?" "A letter once. Maybe more." "Did Wes take it?" "Yes." "Did Daniel think I received it?" Adrian hesitated. "I believe so." I looked at the watch on my kitchen table. For the first time, it no longer felt like something Daniel had thrown away. It felt like something another man had kept between us. Claire wanted to apologize for her father. I told her not to. We still did not know enough. The next clue came from an old photograph in Wes's desk. It showed the 3 of us at the lake, taken earlier on the same day as the argument. Daniel was wearing the watch. Beside him, Wes held a cheap silver fishing scale. The scale had a circular face and a metal loop. From a distance, in the evening light, it would have flashed when Daniel removed it from his pocket. I remembered Daniel reaching into the duffel bag before throwing it. I had reversed the sequence. The silver object I saw go into the bag was not the watch. It was the fishing scale. Daniel kept the watch on his wrist. That was the first major truth I had gotten completely wrong. The watch had survived because it was never lost. But that still did not explain why Wes had the postcards. Adrian gave me the name of a woman Daniel had dated briefly in Portland. Her name was Ellen Price. She lived outside Salem and agreed to speak with me. Ellen remembered Daniel as funny, wounded, and exhausting. He wanted reconciliation, she said, but only if you apologize first. That sounds like him. It also sounds like you, from what he said. I could not argue. She remembered Wes visiting. Daniel trusted him. So did I. Ellen studied me. That's the problem. I asked what she meant. She told me Daniel called Wes whenever he was close to contacting me. Wes usually talked him out of it. Why? Daniel said Wes thought you both needed more time. Years of it, apparently. Then she added something stranger. Wes was afraid Daniel would return to Spokane. Not because of me. Because of something Daniel knew about the lake night. I felt my stomach tighten. What did he know? Ellen shook her head. He never told me. He only said Wes made one mistake that night, and Daniel promised to carry it. I went back to my memory of the dock. The shouting. The bag hitting water. Wes standing between us. Then something else surfaced. Before Daniel walked away, Wes had blood on his right hand. I had forgotten that completely. The injury was small. A cut across Wes's palm. At the time, he said he caught it on a nail in the dock rail, but there was no exposed nail. I drove to the lake and stood at the same public dock. The boards had been replaced years ago, but the slope and distance were familiar. I remembered our truck parked near the boat ramp. I remembered Daniel shouting. And I remember a fourth person, a man named Curtis Lane. Curtis owned the trailer Daniel rented. He came down during the argument because we were making noise. He was still alive. I found him through county property records and called. Curtis remembered us immediately. You fellows nearly knocked me into the water. Nearly? He laughed without humor. Your friend, Wes, shoved me. That was the blood. Curtis had grabbed Wes's shirt. Wes pushed him away. Curtis fell against a cleat and cut his forearm badly enough to need stitches. I had forgotten the confrontation. Curtis had threatened to call the sheriff. Daniel stopped him. He paid for my clinic bill. Curtis told me it was his fault. It wasn't. No. Why take the blame? Curtis said, because your friend had been drinking. Wes had driven us to the lake. If police came, they would ask who planned to drive home. Wes had already had too much whiskey. I had not noticed. Daniel did. Curtis agreed not to call anyone if Wes left the keys and covered the medical bill. Daniel gave him cash. Then, according to Curtis, Wes told Daniel he had ruined everything. That sentence mattered. Wes had not been protecting Daniel that night. Daniel had protected Wes. I called Claire. She was silent when I told her. Then she said, my dad stopped drinking that year. I knew that. I had always believed it was because his wife threatened to leave. Claire said no. Mom told me something happened at the lake. The watch sat beside my phone. Daniel gave it to Wes later. Not as payment. Not as proof. I began to suspect it had been a reminder. And if I was right, Wes had spent 18 years keeping both the watch and the truth it represented away from me. Adrian called me 1 week later. He had found an old envelope behind a cabinet Daniel built. Inside was a letter addressed to Wes. Adrian read it to me over the phone. I gave you the watch because I don't want it anymore. Every time I look at it, I remember Bob standing there while I covered for you. You keep saying you are protecting him. I think you are protecting yourself. Tell him before I do. The letter was dated 2009. Daniel had sent it 3 years after leaving Spokane. I sat quietly for a long time. Did Daniel ever come back? I asked. Not that I know. What happened to him? Adrian's voice softened. Daniel died in 2012 after a heart attack at a job site near Tacoma. I had not known. Wes knew. Ellen knew. Adrian knew. I was the brother who did not. That grief came differently than I expected. Not sharp. Heavy. like something placed carefully across my chest. I asked Adrian whether Daniel had family. No children. No wife. Was he alone? No. That helped a little. Claire came over that evening. I showed her Daniel's letter. She cried before she finished reading it. My father went to Daniel's funeral, she said. How do you know? I found the program years ago. He told me it was an old coworker. I felt anger toward a dead man, so intense that I had to stand up. Why had Wes done this? Not one decision. Years of decisions. Postcard hidden. Letters withheld. A funeral attended in secret. Then Claire said, "There's something you should see." She brought a small digital voice recorder from her purse. Wes had used it after his stroke, because writing became difficult. Claire had been sorting the files. One recording was labeled Robert. Wes's voice was weak. If Bob finds a watch, he'll think I stole years from him. He coughed. Maybe I did. Then he said something that made me sit down. But Daniel asked me not to tell him after what happened to Karen. Karen was my wife. And suddenly the mystery was not only about my brother. Karen died in 2007. Breast cancer. She was 54. The worst year of my life came less than 12 months after Daniel left. Wes was there through all of it. He drove Karen to treatments when I worked. He fixed meals. He sat beside me in the garage after she died because I could not stand being inside our house. Daniel knew she was sick. I had never understood why he did not come home. Wes's recording explained the rest. Daniel contacted him when he learned about the diagnosis. He wanted to return. Wes told him not to. At first, I thought that was a final betrayal. Then the recording continued. Wes said Karen had asked him to keep Daniel away. I did not believe it until Claire found a letter in the same box. Karen's handwriting. Wes, Bob is barely holding himself together. Daniel will come back angry, and Bob will spend whatever time I have left trying to fix his brother instead of being here. Please ask Daniel to wait. I hate asking this. I am asking anyway. The second truth was harder than the first. Wes had not created the separation alone. Karen had asked for it. Daniel agreed. At first, only for a few months. Then Karen worsened quickly. By the time she died, Daniel was ashamed he had stayed away. He told Wes he would wait until I was ready. Wes never told him that I was ready because I never knew there was anything to be ready for. And Wes never told me because he had made a promise to Karen that continued after the reason for it was gone. He protected my final months with my wife. Then he kept protecting me from the cost of that protection. Daniel gave Wes the watch because it had been my gift. A physical reminder that Wes owed me the truth. Wes kept it hidden because every year made the confession worse. No one was innocent. Karen chose my peace over Daniel's chance to reconcile. Daniel chose pride after grief, gave him another reason to wait. Wes confused loyalty with control. And I had made my brother believe, long before any of them made their choices, that love for me always came with conditions. I visited Daniel's grave in Tacoma that fall. It was a small marker beneath a cedar tree. I brought the watch. For a while, I considered leaving it there. That would have been clean, too clean. The watch had already spent enough years carrying decisions made by people who were no longer around to explain them. So I kept it. I also called Ellen and Adrian again. I asked for stories about Daniel that had nothing to do with me. They gave me dozens. He made terrible chili. He could repair a chair without making a sound. He hated cell phones. He once built a dining table for a woman who could not pay and told the owner of the cooperative he had misplaced the invoice. I learned my brother had become a man I never met. That remains the part one cannot forgive completely. Not Wes, not Karen, not Daniel, myself. Claire and I scattered Wes's ashes the following spring at a fishing spot near Lake Pend Oreille. Before we left, she asked what I planned to do with the watch. I don't know. Does it run? I had never checked. At home, I took it to a small repair shop in Spokane. The watchmaker opened the case, cleaned the movement, replaced a worn seal, and wound it. The second hand began moving. I laughed when I saw it, not because it felt miraculous, because it was so ordinary, a watch that had never been destroyed. A relationship that had not ended in one dramatic moment. Just time passing while several people kept waiting for someone else to speak first. I wear the watch now. The scratched crystal is still there. So is the tiny crescent dent I made in the vise decades ago. Every few days, I have to wind it. If I forget, it stops. I used to think that meant something had ended. Now I know better. Sometimes a thing has only been left unattended. Sometimes, if there is enough of it still intact, you can put your fingers to it, turn carefully, and feel it begin again.